Hi, Chris.
It's a surprise visit. Albertus, just put on your microphone. Hy praat met jou, Chris, hoor jy?
Ek kan nie hoor te sê nie.
Okay,
Albertus.
Ek sit complete Luddite, so dit
Jy sit volledig jou mikrofoon af, Albertus.
Okay, everyone.
Albertus, druk die knoppie wat sê mic. Daarbo regs.
ja.
Ja, daar's hy.
Hi. Hi, Albertus.
Hallo.
Nice om jou te sien, Sjoe.
Great.
Okay,
Excited.
guys. It's excited. Thank you for joining us, Albertus.
Sure.
Obviously, we'll wait for guests to enter, but this session is also recorded, so we can make it available to our social media audiences, and we can disseminate it among students and the broader fashion community. My
Okay.
name is Stefan Dallapria. I am the academic manager and head of academics at the Stadio School of Fashion. I want to thank you all for joining Spring Sessions, Session 2 tonight, where we will be discussing Fashion Africa Online, or the online African fashion space. This includes all sorts of topics such as e-commerce, fashion media, influencing, fashion broadcasting, and related topics. So I want you all to really enjoy the session, and feel free to scroll down some questions that you have for our guests, who I will introduce now.
Okay.
Firstly, welcome to the future of fashion. I hope we really have an interesting discussion tonight about what the future for Fashion Africa Online holds for us. Okay, firstly, I want to introduce our guests. First up, a veteran of the fashion industry. So the fashion industry has been Chris Viljoen's first love for almost 3 decades. Starting out as a shop assistant, Chris then moved into media. He was the fashion editor for notable publications, including The Cut and Tribute, and the fashion director for FHM, Elle, and Sari, before moving into the online retail field, specifically Spree, that later merged with Superbalist. Chris has seen the industry evolve, pivot, and realign in a dramatic way over the past decade. His expertise lies in creative strategy and content creation, with a strong emphasis on driving conversions. Chris believes that storytelling and visual craft is as important as product and design. Chris, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Next up, we have Mokgetwa Masemola. So Mokgetwa is a content, brand strategy, and storytelling expert. Over the past 8 years, he has worked as a lifestyle multimedia journalist, a copywriter, social media manager, and a digital marketer. His award-winning work has helped local and international brands successfully position themselves as craft effective content that cuts above the digital noise in their respective fields. He is passionate about African fashion and luxury, having produced work for Chivas Regal and Grade Africa for the Grade 8 capsule collection, Puma and Sports Scene for the She Owns a Success campaign, and most recently for AFI, African Fashion International. After a successful stint at AFI, he has now left the company and is pursuing an exciting new journey as founder and CEO of Creme Fashion and Luxury Media Agency. Mokgethwa holds a BA in Television Journalism and Media Studies from Rhodes University, as well as BA Honours, Television Journalism and Media Studies from Wits University. Mokgethwa, I don't know if you're in the chat, I can't see you, but if you are, welcome, and we look forward to hearing your insights tonight.
I am here. Thank you so much for having me.
So good to have you.
I'm just wondering if you're able to see me on camera.
Okay.
Are you?
No, not yet.
All right, I'll turn it
Yes.
on. But thank you very much for the instruction and thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you. Next up, we have Anal van Rooyen as one of our moderators. She holds a bachelor's degree in fashion media from then Lysoft, now School of Fashion, Stadio School of Fashion, complemented by an honors degree in fashion. Anal's professional background includes experience in the retail sector, where she served as a bridal consultant. Over the past 4 years, Anal has been dedicated to teaching fashion studies in the BA Media program, the HC Media program, and the Stadio School of Fashion Diploma in Clothing Production. She has been part of the media sector, involved with I See a Different You and SA Creatives, where she curated the Fashion Forum with Nelly, an online platform focusing on media representation, and she presented a workshop at Comic-Con Africa. Additionally, she has had the privilege of presenting her research at notable institutions such as DUT, SAMES, and DEFSA. Anal, welcome and thank you very much for moderating this session.
Thank you.
Finally, we have Frankie Burger. Born in Johannesburg, South Africa, Frankie Burger's academic journey began with a Bachelor's of Arts in Graphic Design and a degree in photography from the University of Stellenbosch in 1988. Her passion for photography led her to Scuola Lorenzo of Florence, Italy in 1989. Returning to South Africa, she worked as a press photographer at Beeld newspaper until 1992, and later a commercial photographer for 2 years before establishing a successful freelance photography career from 1993 to 2015. In her pursuit of artistic growth, Burger earned an advanced diploma in fine arts from Wits and a master's degree in fine arts from the University of Witwatersrand in 2008. Her master's thesis explored the interplay of photography, landscape, and belonging in context, delving into battle sites and the essence of place. Frankie also teaches at various institutions, including the Market Photo Workshop, the University of Johannesburg, and the Vega School. In 2013, she joined Stadio School of Fashion, where she supervised photography courses and contributed to curriculum development. Throughout her career, Burger received prestigious awards such as the Breit Everard Reed Prize in 2008 and the Tierney Fellowship to International Exhibitions. She showcased her curatorial skills in 2012, organizing 2 group exhibitions at the Speak Photography Circa. Additionally, she explored alternative photography methods in Rochester, USA, and gained recognition for her work in the 2016 exhibition, South Africa, Art of a Nation. Frankie, as one of our colleagues, we thank you for moderating this session with us. I now hand over to our moderators.
Thank you, Steph.
Hey, good evening and thank you for being here. So I would just like to start the session to give some context to what we to cover Fashion Africa online session. So I think it is important just to set the tone specifically that in this evening session, we are going to talk about the relationship between fashion in the African online space. And it's important to note that fashion is not just about clothing. It is really a tool that we use for self-expression and a means of communication within society. We have always used fashion specifically as a role in our lives, whether it is telling stories, conveying identities, or even reflecting our cultural and societal values. So I think especially in today's digital age, fashion media has definitely evolved into a very dynamic platform that compromises of print publications, digital platforms, social media, documentaries, and all of these elements play a very important role in disseminating fashion storytelling to a global audience. So in our we know that fashion storytelling has taken on many new forms and new dimensions. So we know we have print publications, which is the cornerstone of the fashion industry specifically, and now we see it in our digital platforms. This is also where we want to focus on social media, which has become more of a democratizing force, allowing individuals to become fashion influencers and curators of their own unique style. And what power do these fashion influencers have at the end of the day? So basically, the fashion very exclusive, but it's a global community where brand, every business, every influencer has a voice. And what is it that we are communicating of Africa in this online space from a fashion perspective ultimately, and how we use this means of storytelling to educate, to inspire, to basically showcase the artistic elements that goes into every the story or the narrative or the underlining message that is basically important. So that's just to contextualize the theme and how we are linking this evening's conversation going forward with our two guest speakers. And I'm now going to hand over to Frankie, the next moderator, just to give us some more statistics and insights into what does the data reveal of African fashion in the online space. Frankie?
Right. I'm here. All
Are
right.
you there?
So, all right. So the creative scene in Africa is rapidly changing and becoming, there's a lot of opportunities happening. And according to a survey that was done in 2023 in July, the Africa's population are mostly 60% under the age of 25. And especially after the pandemic, more and more individuals started to use mobile e-commerce. And it's amazing, they're expecting around about 500 million e-commerce users in Africa by 2025. So among these creative entrepreneurs throughout Africa, clothing is the most popular business and making up to 62% of those surveyed. Now, considering there's Africa's significant share in the global population, it's estimated at 17.2% in 2021, there's really a lot of potential for the continent to contribute more towards these creative industries. Now, our discussion tonight is really all around media, and our two guest speakers really are storytellers within the media space. And media really connects designers and brands and consumers, and social media helps to promote fashion brands. So it creates excitement around and attention for these brands, even beyond what we used to believe that's only for bigger brands. So, Chris, we are really excited to hear all about how you assist future creatives in the fashion industry through media. So welcome, and we're looking forward to your discussion.
Hi, everyone. Please, I want this to be a discussion and not just me talking. So if anybody's got anything to say or a comment, please let's immediately say something so we can talk about it. And I think that's the best way to sort of describe what is going on right now, is the fact that media and the way that people are consuming media has changed substantially. It is not the good old days of the supermodels on the cover where magazines reigned supreme. Things have changed substantially. Can you just go on to the next little slide, perhaps? To just explain a little bit about my career and where I've been. I've been in fashion media for quite a substantial amount of time. I spent a lot of time in both men's and women's fashion. I worked in trend forecasting for quite a bit. I worked in fashion direction, where we literally incorporated trend into what we were buying, as well as identifying specific designers to showcase and to actually sell on the different online sites that I've worked at, as well as creative execution of these visions, and to be able to show what things are like and what we stand for.
Okay, we'll just manage the slides quickly.
I've got the slide up. I'm sharing it, Frankie, I think.
It still says Chris Viljoen.
The slide didn't change.
It just didn't change.
Okay. Sorry, can you see it now?
Not yet. It's still there.
Okay, I'm just gonna stop sharing and then I'll share again.
All right. Okay.
Sorry about that. There's always some gremlin in the.
Absolutely. There we go. So let's carry on. Probably the thing I've heard the most, especially in the last 10 years of my career, especially young designers or designers in general, say things like, if I only have my own online store or someplace, an outlet where I can sell my products at, things will be so much better, things will be easier. And I just want to almost like sort of crash that old idea really, really quickly. Is online in general, so that means people like Takealot, for instance, the conversion rate is 3.65% in general. That means for every 100 people that come to your site, only 3.5 of them will convert. Fashion and apparel is actually lower than that. And before the pandemic, it was almost like a worldwide average of between 1% and 2% will convert. That means that you have to, for every 2 people that buy something, you need 100 people to come to your site. So that means if you want 2 things to sell every day, and there's a week, you need 700 people to come to your site every week. And that is a lot of traffic that needs to be channeled into your specific online store, for instance. And it really, really becomes a huge problem of how do you get those people onto your site. It is a huge task. That is why all these online stores bombard you with emails continuously, send lots of links on Instagram and all the other social, because they need the traffic. That's also how Facebook and all those people make all the money, and Google. It's the Google search engines that they advertise these things on. Those trolls that follow you all around, and before you know it, they're showing you what you just looked at. That is what that is about. And as a small business in general, that type of money is just, I mean, it is truly staggering to hear what the budgets are to be able to get those kind of feet almost in your store. It is almost it's not even an option in most small to medium-sized businesses reality. So what we have seen is that because of that reality, that there has been a use of channels all over the show. People use Instagram, TikTok especially is the new phenomenon that is going to be absolutely explode. It'll be the combination of entertainment, infotainment, all of that converges in a space where you actually can sell things. I don't know if anybody is, I'm completely hooked on TikTok as we speak, and it's just been Fashion Week. The amazing thing that really has it's really changed my life is not only can I watch the show online, but I see people that are at the show and what they are seeing, what they're thinking, And then immediately after the show, there's lots of people, different fashion influencers, experts, busy discussing what they saw and what they thought of the specific shows. So the almost like the 360 experience of all of that is truly unbelievable and almost untapped to a large extent. Can you please go to the next slide? So the big question is that how do we use all of these new technologies in a way that is beneficial to the brand and help us sell product? Because of being a fashion designer or a store and you don't get to sell your product, I mean, that really doesn't mean anything. So there's a little bit of almost like a little study that I did and things to show how different people use these platforms in different ways to actually sell product at the end of the day. Daniel Simmons is an English content creator. He's originally from New Zealand. He lives in London, and he is a menswear designer. He sells product on his site, started off in sort of the midst of COVID, in selling basic tracksuits, sort of luxury tracksuits. It has expanded its range right now. And the amazing thing about what he does is he sells his life as a total idea. He is constant about what he does. He shows how he looks for the product, finds it, designs the product, the quality of the things. He drops a YouTube video every single week on a Sunday evening. He's regular with that. And by all of that, he also then educates his customer in a way that is almost like a third party. So we'll show lots of different brands, how he incorporates it into his life and how it works. And especially in the men's space, he's truly interesting because he shows guys how to dress practically. Really, really interesting. Can you please move on? These YouTube videos, can you go back, please? Are sometimes a little bit too much. He's got a very minimalist aesthetic, but you go with him as he drinks coffee, eats a pastry, goes to the gym. He appeals to lots of different ideas of what men are particularly interested in, and he is super focused. So in this new world, I almost believe that the more focused and the clearer you are about your brand and who needs to buy a brand, the better for you. So yes, inclusivity is an incredible thing, but if you do not come from an authentic place where that is what your interest is, it is almost worthless. The amazing thing about him is he drops product every 2 or 3 weeks. They normally sell out, and he really works it. I think that he's got a very clever idea of how to use online, not necessarily in the traditional way, but probably in a very nice futuristic way. You can also see in the kind of products that he's expanding to that business is really doing well. And I think that is a really incredible thing that we need to learn these days. You know, it is all fine and well to get an influencer to dress your in your brand, but at the end of the day, even though influencers are super helpful in getting the word out there, you are buying into what they are selling, and you're not selling what you're doing self. And I think Daniel is an incredible example of that. You buy into what he is selling. Really, really incredible. TB is probably one of my favorite brands right now. Really interesting history. She's really originally from Hong Kong. And what I find truly amazing is that she specializes, she's in that space somewhere between super luxury and sort of what happens on the normal sort of street retail space right now. So really nicely designed, higher end product at an affordable price that is not too expensive. And she has got a really great minimalist point of view. And what I find particularly interesting about her and what she has done, actually, let me just go back. The one thing, the amazing thing that the pandemic has come out has sort of taught us is that production values does not necessarily have to be incredible, and the way you tell your story doesn't always have to be at the same level. So even though their campaigns are super amazing and very slick, and everything that happens on the store is very interesting, what happens on the YouTube channel is where the real magic lies. Is every single week they drop a video of approximately 50 to 60 minutes long, where the designer and two experts or a guest or whatever talks through the product that is in the actual store and how it works and how she uses it from day to day, how the denim works, how she takes it from day to evening. It is extremely personable. She drops the camera. It is really a completely immersive exercise where you almost feel like you are in a similar type of situation to what we are in now, with all the glitches and everything included. A really incredible experience. And she goes through the product. You know that she's going for dinner on Thursday night. She flew to Paris on Saturday night. This is how this is going to work. This is how she packs her bags. It is really almost an immersive experience. And by doing this type of thing, she almost takes the power back to her brand. She becomes the most important thing, and the design of the brand becomes the most important thing in what they're selling. And it is really, really an incredible experience. Super, super interesting. And I'm completely addicted on Sunday evenings. I normally sit and watch all of these things because that's when they normally drop. Can you carry on? So in conclusion, what I want to say about designers and online fashion in general is that you need a holistic approach. It is not a one-tiered effect. It is not about just the store or just the online store or just your Instagram. It needs to be everything together. I think the idea of the more global we get and the bigger the world are and the easier things are accessible for us, the more personal and more relatable things need to be. And the word real has become so important. People want to see you and they want to know what you're about and what your flaws are and to show how things really work in the real world. Another thing is what both these two brands have got in common is how constant they are. They are relentless. It happens on a regular basis on Instagram. They're all on TikTok continuously. The YouTube the videos drop all the time, and they have become the brands that become the hero again. They're not giving the power away to media or influencers at all, and that is really, really a great thing, and probably where our future lies again. Okay, that's my story.
Thank you so much. So there was some very interesting points that you definitely touched on, Chris. So I think what really stood out for me, and maybe you can just further expand on this, is that from everything that you've said, specifically from the different changes and the conversion rates, it seems that there has been a shift from our staggered photographs that we use in social media to video content that has been more increasingly popular over the time. So our short form videos, such as on the TikTok or on our Instagram Reels or our YouTube live streaming. So I think, in your opinion, is there a shift from our staggered visuals to more inclusive videos where it aligns with that storytelling, where it showcases the values, where we are almost becoming partners with our followers or our influencers or our customers, showing them that these are the daily tasks? As I think, should the focus be more on video production to engage with their audiences, or do you still think there is a lot of focus on the staggered photographs?
I think there is a space for all of that.
Okay.
In the future.
Mm.
What I really believe in is almost the staggeredness in the level of execution where things happen.
Mm.
So from beautiful campaigns that are shot by amazing photographers with beautiful models and whatever, our audience understand what that is. They also understand what a handheld experience is like, and the realness of all of that. The incredible thing is during the pandemic, I got completely hooked to Trinny Woodall. I don't know if anybody remembers her from the sort of late 90s. They had a show, What Not to Wear. I can't remember. And the amazing thing is that she goes into a Zara in London and then shows you what is in the shop. It is all handheld, and it is a very real experience. Then she walks down the street in Soho and shows you all the different stores that are on the street. And she goes into the high end, the low end, she goes into Harvey Nichols. And it is really a compelling exercise. So I think as our consumers become more part of the big world and they are knowledgeable and they know what's going on, they also then really understand what personal and real is and things that relate to them. That is, it's almost a juxtaposition of that. It's where the magic lies. And the message that you send out need to consist of all those different messages together.
Definitely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the insight. And I think also another important point that you really focused on was the collaborative content between content creators and influencers, which has become more common and more accustomed. It's more normal these days. Allowing for cross promotion and the creation of content. So I think especially in this digital age where we have influencers who have now this new type of authority and basically have the impact of what we as customers want to buy, why we buy it, how we buy it, makes them also an effective tool to use with the purchasing decisions online. And as you've stated, the influencers are the masters of storytelling and using the narratives to weave the products into their own lives and showing us how these products are basically enhancing their lives specifically. So this is where I'm going to hand over to our second speaker. Is basically known for content, brand strategy, and known as the storytelling expert. So this is quite exciting, linking from our online space to the focus of influencers and learning a little bit more about how do we create effective storytelling. So I'm now going to hand over to speaker 2, Mogedwa. The floor is yours. So if you can just switch on your camera, and if you are ready to present, then we can kick off the session.
Thank you so much. From my side, the camera is on. Are you able to see me now?
Yes, I can see you now. Thank you for confirming.
Okay, fantastic. Hi, everyone. Good evening. What I want to talk about today is specifically how digital innovation can help African fashion brands as well as creatives new markets for themselves. And the reason why I split this into two between brands and creatives is I think that there's often a misconception when we talk about fashion brands as being businesses and organizations that creatives are. But there is certainly... Are you still able to hear me? Sorry about that.
Yes, I can still hear you.
Okay, great. So what I was saying is that there's certainly a whole host of other creatives within the fashion, from designers to the seamstresses to photographers, the content creators, and everybody really that makes up the ecosystem of what we know fashion to be, particularly in the digital space, right? The entrepreneurs cannot really forge a path for themselves in digital without all of the other creatives that play a part in the scheme. So I want us to always remember that when we talk about brands within the fashion space, it's more than just the people that are making the garments. If we can go to the next slide, what I want to start with is, because so often I feel that when we talk about African creativity and Africa in general, there's a big focus on kind of a negative aspect of things. So I want us to start with a little bit of positivity and establish what it is that we really know within the industry. And then from there, we can look at what the landscape is like. I'm not sure if the slide has changed for anyone else, or my side is still the same.
Just going to unshare it again.
I'll share it again.
There we go. Thank you.
There we go. Gremlins.
When we think about what is it that we already know about fashion, I think the first thing is that there is no lack of creativity. there's so much, so many young people who are putting incredible work to jewelry designers, to work consistently on digital. There is such a rich pool of talent in Africa. And that's kind of the starting point that we always need to move from when we think about how to advance African fashion, particularly on digital. We also need to remember that there's a rich heritage here in Africa, and that makes our industry the most in the world. And I think that's an important point because it speaks to our ability to tell effective stories. Because our heritage is so diverse and so rich, we have more with which to position brands, particularly textile brands, particularly fashion brands from different corners of the African. We also know that we are continuing to see widespread global recognition of the unique African aesthetic, as well as the innovative craftsmanship. You guys are aware a while ago, Anna Wintour designers, Kenneth Eyes from Nigeria. And from there, we started to see Korea take to new heights, but also other African designers started to rise as the attention shifted to Africa and what we're able to do in Africa. We're also seeing the likes of Campbell walking in a lot of African runway. So the world's attention has shifted to Africa, and we need to kind of leverage that and take advantage of that. I'm also a fan of an article that I recently read by Africa.com, which reminds us that although there's so many fashion brands in the industry, a lot of them are young, they're small, and they struggle to generate, kind of significant orders and revenue. And that's because our industry is relatively young, but at the same time, there's a lot of young people who are now finding their way within the fashion industry. So we also need to keep that in mind when we dissect why the way things are for the that are going to bring up. It is because so many of them are young, so many of them are still learning, and so many of them are still trying to generate funding for their businesses and kind of launch themselves into their next year. In that same article by Africa.com, they also do remind us that nearly 70% of these businesses are less than 5 years old, meaning that they're very, very new businesses and still finding their and about a third of them are less than 3 years old, with 68% of the creative businesses employing less than 5 people. So these are very small brands that are trying to set in Africa. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. So I then looked at the growth of digital technology in Africa. All industries across the African continent are growing digitally. And so that's where African fashion also needs to be playing and moving in order to survive in this. Quite remarkable growth in terms of digital and social media that we're seeing across the industry. And so now platforms on social particularly are significant towards driving new customer traffic, with about 47% of new customer inquiries in the fashion industry coming from social media. So that's a very important platform for fashion entrepreneurs to communicate with their customers, but also to generate leads and build upon that fan base in such a way as they can create brand advocates, for example, and also make use of influencers and other brand advocates that speak on behalf of the brand. There's a particular, some stats that I came across when I was doing research for this conversation today. I saw a recent study compiled by the White Paper, and they put together a study that they've called Unleashing the Commercial Potential of African through Digital Technology. In that study, they looked at respondents from 46 African countries in order to understand and define the African fashion sector, as well as profile the African fashion market. And what they were able to do by putting together this study was to gain insight on how we can begin to support public and private sector actors to build solutions that help small and micro fashion to scale themselves into markets, right? And from that study, we're able to learn that some of the major barriers to adoption of digital marketing and digital executions in Africa is, number one, a high setup cost, right? That speaks to the fact that one of the critical issues that entrepreneurs and creatives in our industry are not adopting digital technologies is because it might simply be too expensive, whether it's a data cost or the hardware, the equipment that you might need to put that together, or even just having to procure the services of content. The other issue just with online payments. This is particular to e-commerce, of course, and although there have been some recent improvements, there is still a problem with accessibility to online payment services that have been historically, I could say, kind of limited on the continent. Internationally, they are quite widespread, but here not only are they limited, but again, they also have them. So these small, young entrepreneurs are able always to make use of those services. Number 3 is a logistical and delivery being in Africa. I saw this at my previous job as well. A lot of designers have a problem of their garments and products to customers, particularly because of logistical issues. Again, delivery costs associated with that. Consumers aren't always able to pay for the garment and then also pay for delivery costs as well. So that poses a challenge, I think, for entrepreneurs in this industry, but also even when you think, it's not always easy to connect different industries and different regions with South Africa in terms of delivery. We also know that there's a lack of knowledge in the industry. Part of why I left my 9 to 5 and started my own was I could see that there's so much, there's a big gap within the knowledge base of the fashion industry. A lot of designers come into the business knowing how to make garments, but a lot of them might not be able to know how to do e-commerce, for example, how to do brand position, how to set up their brand in a digital ecosystem. So there's a big gap in terms of knowledge in this space. And the last one is difficulties with ongoing maintenance. Obviously, having to maintain your website, maintain your social media, consistency is important, authenticity is important, kind of brand positioning that you go with. We also know that there is definitely a big gap, not only in the fashion industry, but I think in many industries in the African context. I have put some information on the screen with regards to how women are faring, particularly in the e-commerce space, and we are seeing that 31% of women are less likely than men to have e-commerce websites. Additionally, a lot of female entrepreneurs within the industry, and this is also from the study I told you about earlier, are seen to be twice as likely to report having no e-commerce skills. So it's not that they don't want to be on e-commerce, but they may not necessarily have access to the skills of how to for themselves. Right? So that's, I think, a big problem we also need to look at. In terms of continental fashion trade and how digital can make that more accessible for us, I think when we think of African creatives, a lot of them primarily in trade with outside of Africa. This has also been my experience, is that a lot of fashion designers and a lot of fashion creatives are making sales with international customers, international markets, meaning that there is an issue with how we are trading within the African continent. And I genuinely believe that through digital media, we can be able to open up those lines of trade, number one, but I also think lines of communication from brand to customer is something we can solve using digital. I then also looked at some of the challenges that are faced by designers on the African continent specifically. When we look at the skills gap, I did mention this earlier, there's obviously that needs to be done. A lot of that face African creatives, just as with any, to be honest with you, but particularly in the African fashion industry, the obstacles can be low access to the markets. Like I said, a lot of people are not using digital tools because they might not have skills, so they have low access to a wider market. They might only be able to sell the store or the customer that's supporting the Instagram, not really reaching more than that. A lot of touched on that as well. But also I think there's a challenging regulatory with African trade, not only regulatory, but even legal and political. A lot of the designers, even having worked with them on fashion weeks, for example, something as simple as getting the design into South Africa for them to appear. Times proved to be really, really difficult, getting their visas, getting all the paperwork sorted. And so I think that's another phase within terms of being able to widen their reach for their brand. And then having looked at some of the challenges, I think we can look at how we address them and the interventions that we can take. Obviously, one of the key improvements that I think we can make within this industry would be to continue advocating for a shift towards digital and social media. We have to have these conversations where digital social media are put in the forefront, where we can talk about what they mean and what implications they have for entrepreneurs within the space. Even e-commerce platforms are important. And of course, these can help entrepreneurs reach domestic, even regional and international markets. I think 3D virtual influencers are a big trend in Africa. I think we need to look at how do we create a brand advocate and a brand persona that is able to live through the test of time, someone that is consistent. That's a very big one. So with 3D virtual influencers, the person is consistent in terms of how often they're posting, in terms of how they look, because the brand has complete control of how they style that influencer. So you have complete consistency and you never have to worry about influencer who's an actual person kind of putting out content and making that might completely go against how you find the brand. We're also looking at improved accessibility with with virtual influencers, community managers for brands are able to, through these influencers, communicate with people more effectively, communicate with people. If you use, for example, AI, this can be a tool that's available 24/7, which means it's more accessible even to people in different time zones than the one you might. There's a lot more flexibility with virtual influencers. They're able to work even outside of hours that human influencers might not be able to work. You can kind of place them in different environments using background. So that's really important. Increased creativity, obviously, you have no limitations in terms of how you want to create your brand persona. So you really are building sort of a mascot and champion for your brand. And I think if done right, this can be cost effective insofar as I think the huge chunk of the cost is in creating the avatar, but once you have them, the costs are kind of relatively low, but also if you collaborate with different creatives in the industry, you're able to be profitable. And of course, we're also able to gain insights insofar as, if we use influencers to put out garments in market, we're able to test how the industry feels about that. On the next slide, I briefly sustainable fashion. This is really important. Sustainable fashion is where the industry is right now, and it will continue to be the frontier of fashion. It's all about how you're able to sustainable growth, not only for yourself as an entrepreneur, but also for the industry, how you enlist eco-friendly means of creating your garments that are authentic. They last longer when they are sustainable, and they give your brand longevity. People feel affinity towards your brand. They love the brand story. They love that where the materials were sourced, how these brands were made. To give you an example, in my previous work, we had a designer called Lani Rani by Shamar Moody, who's a sustainable fashion designer. And so often products were outside of the other design. That's because it was sustainable and people could appreciate the craftsmanship that went into how to make those garments, but also the story behind it. It's about someone who is willing to create something and put in their time and create energy into it. I think that was a really critical learning for myself, and I think we can also all learn from by Shamara. And then also artificial intelligence, I think is important when we look at growing digital landscape in Africa. So we should move towards spaces where we don't need 24/7 community managers, 24/7 social media managers, but we need to be able to create spaces and platforms that are able to learn and understand what it is that people are asking and needing from a brand. But also AI, I think, is so important because it bridges the gap between yourself and humans that might be far away, remote places. you're able to give people virtual because this is a challenge that designers experience with selling, is that people are not always able, especially when a product is expensive, they're not always able to make the decision as to whether or not they want to purchase it because they're not sure about the material. How does it feel? How does it move on my body? How does it sit on? So I think through AI, we can address some of those. And then finally, on the last slide, I just wanted to wrap up again, throwing back to the study by they concluded by saying that we need to, we can leverage digital technology for business scalability by number one, skills development and trade support within spoken about, harmonizing the African e-commerce regime, which I've also spoken about, ensuring that creatives can fully benefit from the Africa Free Trade Agreement is really important. That will help us bridge those gaps in terms of how our designers in one location able to different customers throughout Africa. And then finally, increase investment in the creative, critical and so vital to how we move forward. I'm just quickly going to run through this. Shout out to the team at Stadio for letting me speak about this. I recently started a brand called Creme Fashion Luxury Media. And the reason I did this is because, in my time in fashion, I realized, and I alluded to this earlier, in that a lot of fashion designers are really, really good at producing garments and really good at incredible fashion pieces, but they struggle to position their brands. They struggle to produce award-winning media and award-winning brand position that helps them set their brands apart, but also position themselves effectively. Because I believe that luxury, particularly luxury fashion, not so much how the garment costs, but it's the story behind it, how you're able to tell where the materials were sourced, who made this, the fact that it was sewn for this many hours, that makes something luxurious. So I started this brand to help address some of these issues for entrepreneurs in the industry. If you go to the next slide, I think I did leave in the slide where I show a little bit of how I'm going to do this. So this is just a bit of background on Creme. We can go to the next slide. The next one as well. Next, please. There we go. So this is what I wanted to talk about. This is another reason why I started Creme. So I've created what I'm calling the Creme Creative Colony. It's essentially a gathering of the most incredible creatives within the fashion industry outside of designers. So from graphic designers, photographers, videographers, website developers, AI people who work with video, who work with all kinds of creative mediums in the industry, and I brought them together to create a studio of really high quality and global standard media so that our brands in Africa can also position themselves as luxurious as they are, as luxurious as they are. So this, in a way, is not just giving a platform to designers, but also to the growth of yeah, we can just get through this. So I just put this here, just a slide touch on how the business is positioned. I've split it into two. So one is the brand positioning side of it, which really just looks at how you brand from your brand profile, brand persona, those kinds of things, your website, logos, creating that image for your brand. And then, of course, the content services, how you market your brand in terms of social media or marketing. Yeah, that's about it. I've tried to speak as fast as I can.
Thank you so much. That was, you were breaking up a little bit, so but we caught the drift of it. But my question is to you, listening to all of this, it's if we get back to or down to practicalities, what would you think? Chris was speaking about authenticity and how important it is. And I really think if you look back at the fashion industry as a whole, authenticity really plays a huge role presently in doing that. take us through that process of advising small fashion creators. Do you sit with them? You know, because we've got a big media department with lots of media students within the fashion industry, and so where do they go from here? You know, do they target small fashion businesses and create social media content? What would you suggest for them?
Look, there's so many different fashion brands within the industry, and when I sit with fashion entrepreneurs and advise them in terms of how to position themselves in the landscape in this day and age, I think my first thing is always to sit with them and understand what is the reason they started with this brand. What is it that they were raised? And I interviewed a gentleman from Cape Town called Kanti. He has a brand called
Mokgetwa,
Hi.
can I interrupt you quickly?
Let's see if we can get the audio a little bit better.
Yes, maybe let's see if you turn off your camera, if it's a bit better, Mokgetwa.
I'm going to do something now. Give me a second.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yes, that's much better. All right. Okay, so let's go back to where you talked about or talked to this gentleman from Cape Town.
Sure. So I was saying that I interviewed Kanti for a documentary, a mini documentary that I was working on. And I remember asking him why he started this brand. And he said to me that the key reason is because he couldn't find garments that he wanted to wear. He couldn't find garments that didn't live within gender norms and gender binaries, because he didn't believe that we have to live in that world where clothings and fabrics are kind of gendered, and there's certain clothing for women and certain clothing for men. And as soon as he said that, it became so effortless for us to be able to help him position his brand, because the core issue and the core reason behind why he started the brand was intact, and it was a personal one. And so from there, he's able to then build affinity with consumers. They're able to relate with him. So other consumers within the market who aren't able to find garments that they want to wear outside of gender spectrums, they are able to relate to him. So I think it's about finding nailing down the reason behind why you're doing what you're doing, and then remaining authentic to that in everything that you do. Everything, I mean, the brand persona, I mean, the tone of voice, I mean, the visuals, all of that has to consistently speak back to why it is that you're doing what you're doing.
Can I ask a question to Chris as well? I think, Chris, what came through, if you can maybe switch on your camera, what came through very, very pertinently from your discussion is the consistency of having that online presence the whole time. Is that viable for? It is viable for young designers to do that. Do they need help?
Frankie, to answer your question, is absolutely consistency is essential, and the only way that young designers are able to bridge this gap, I mean, the huge cost of getting an online store is enormous, yet you still want to be able to sell. So you can almost use any kind of marketplace, whatever that is, to sell your product. But the most important thing is to be able to create some kind of a community, a following, people that identify with you, that are interested in what you've got to say, the product that you're into. And so actually go back to the almost like the basics, and selling your actual garments or your product to the consumers. That is, I mean, it is essential. And that community that you create become loyal because they understand who you are. They go with you. They are interested in what you've got to say. It is especially in our environment where a lot of people have small industries, garage industries for most part. You basically have the power to create all of that by yourself. If you've got a phone and a camera, you probably can do all of that. It is almost more important than anything else that you do. Sure, you have to have great product, but if you then can sell it by yourself, you know, it's the perfect home industry that can grow to something that is really spectacular and quite large.
And I mean, TikTok is a incredible platform for that currently. So yes, so I'm handing over to Anel. Moget, do you agree with Chris?
I do. Can you hear me?
I can hear you well.
Yeah, I do fully agree that the consistency is absolutely vital. And I also thought it was so important what he said in terms of building community for your brand online. I think those are the supporters and people who will really take you far.
Definitely. All right, so thing that both speakers this evening touched on is that fashion isn't just about the garments and accessories, but there's really a lot of focus on the storytelling, the aspiration and the art of making your dreams tangible, the values, the aspiration that we want to communicate with the clients. I think for those, and especially our to aspire to be creators and marketers in the space of this online African fashion industry, we know that there's a lot of challenges and a lot of rewards. So it means that there's already this unique blend of innovation and authenticity that is required. And we need a little bit of creativity, and we need a little bit of the
and now you're just breaking up a little bit.
Yes.
And now you're breaking up and you're freezing a little bit. So let's
okay, I'll pop it in the chat box. Is it better?
Okay. Yes. Okay. So Moget, what do you think?
I didn't get Anel's question. She was breaking up on my side as well.
The questions are, so are there specific trends or styles that have gained prominence? From your point of view, what will that be?
Look, I think we're going to see a lot more influencers kind of creating their own take and own interpretations of fashion. I think that's continuing to be a trend throughout social media, TikTok and Instagram as well. One example that's quite big right now is the Get Ready With Me trend that's happening throughout social. And I think that speaks to, it's a really great way for influencers to make content their own and be able to personalize what we're seeing, as opposed to it being overly branded and very brand centric. But we're able to see whatever it is that is being sold in a more personal space. And so I think the Get Ready With Me content is really great. And I think it also is a great way for brands to show off their garments in occasion. When you're able to give influencers that creative freedom to be as creative as they want to be and show off your garments in their natural setting, it allows people to see, you know, your product in occasion, whether it's a dinner party or it's a night out on the town or a picnic or whatever the case may be. So I think when we're looking at trends that will grow, I think influencers creating their own content and being content creators as opposed to just being mouthpieces for brands is going to become quite a big thing. TikTok is really making that take off. TikTok has really brought influencers to the forefront for a lot of marketing brands. And I think why it works so well is also pro tip to creatives when shooting content. The reason the TikTok model works is because the content lives in a portrait orientation that fills the screen, right? So it brings your content full screen it takes away the digital noise that's going on around and all the other. I always say attention is expensive on digital media. And so if you're able to make your content full the screen, there's nothing else that's distracting people. But also it feels more personal and more connected. You're able to feel like this person is having a conversation with me. So allow influencers to be creative and show off what they can do and what their style is and their authentic way of interpreting fashion.
Chris, and then if you had to sort of devise a creative strategy for young designers or young brands, it will be consistency. But is there anything that you can, what you advise your clients to do?
I think the most important thing is you need to know who you are, what your brand is about, what you want to say, and who do you want to appeal to. It's probably the essence of where everything starts. As soon as you've established that, and I mean, we also need to realize that fashion is an ongoing movement towards the future. So you just need to decide who you are today and take your consumers on a journey with you. You know, you move into something else over a few years, and it is a constantly evolving thing. So know who you are first and foremost. Actually, it's a super complicated, super basic concept all at the same time.
Okay, so if we look at the responsibility of influencers, how can they use their platforms to advocate for change and challenge the status quo in the fashion industry? We've also got that dichotomy between authenticity and versus digital influencers. What do you think can change that or enhance that, or do you see that as a problem?
I'll go first. I think from my side, how influencers can kind of be responsible in what they're putting out, particularly because fashion has, in so many respects has been exclusionary. We all know the typical model size. We all know that, typical model that usually is seen in garments. So I think influencers have a real chance and a real responsibility to address those issues. I think, first of all, they need to watch the kinds of messagings that they put out. That's also really important. I think a lot of the time influencers overlook that it's not just visuals, but the words you're using, the people that you choose to feature in your content, even for brands, when you're looking towards selecting influencers, what message does that put out to the public about your brand? And of course, authenticity is incredibly important. Influencers need to be able to define what is their niche market. Is it high-end luxury? Is it street style? Is it sports luxe, whatever the case may be, or is it sustainable fashion for that matter, or innovative fashion? But it has to be authentic. And once you get to that point of authenticity, you also then need to align yourself with brands that speak similar messaging. That in itself already kind of puts you, it makes you more believable. And I think that is kind of the essence of influence, is believability. Is that if an influencer has said, I like this because it's affordable and it feels good and it lasts long, am I able to believe that this person is authentically sharing a message that they believe in, or is this a brand message that they're getting paid to espouse? So I think messaging and authenticity are crucial when it comes to influencers. And I think they also should, I myself respect people who are able to take a stance on issues and say that I don't work with brands that are not eco-friendly, or I don't work with brands that do not support the LGBT community. Those are really the influencers that make an impact. And if we look at Gen Z trends with the advent of TikTok and even Instagram Reels and all of that movement, what we're seeing with the Gen Z audience is that they are putting brands to the task in terms of saying, what is it that you're contributing to the industry and to the world in general, over and above selling us a product? And that's going to be crucial, I think, moving forward, is how are you responsibly contributing to society?
Yes, I think that's a very valid point, because Gen Zs are very aware of issues around being creative, being sensitive, being aware, and closing and starting to close that gap, which I think is amazing. Chris, what do you think?
I want to be a little bit more controversial about my thoughts on influencers. Is the problem with influencers in general is that we all know that they go where the money is, and a lot of times, a lot of influencers in my head have lost quite a bit of sort of credibility because of that. And especially if you are a small brand, to be able to pay for that reach of that influencer costs a lot of money as well. So I really like the idea where the designer probably in a new kind of partnership with a creative, a digital creator, some kind of person forms a collab where they almost take the power back to the brand. They become the brand and then use an influencer as an added layer of business, not the main way of showing. Get those influencers for the big brands, Pepsi, whatever, Woolworths, the whole lot. But if you are a small business in this country, I really think that your authentic self in the product that you lie is the most important thing. Product, we need to remember that product will always stay king or queen. It is the most important thing. If that is not correct, and you don't honor that, you don't have anything.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. And I think that's
sorry, Frankie.
It's good for us to hear as well, because
I've just got.
Are you gone? He was in and then he was gone.
Frankie, can you see me? Hello?
Hi, Stefan. Yes, I can hear you.
We've got a question from Tando. Tando asks, how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected the online presence and strategies of African fashion brands? Did you hear the question?
Stefan, just repeat that. You were breaking up a bit.
Sorry about that. Tando asks, how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected the online presence and strategies of African fashion brands?
So I can answer that with quite clarity. Is we saw a huge surge in online sales as the pandemic started. I mean, that is evident all over the world. But what has happened in the last year or two, we've definitely seen some kind of a correction that has taken place. Even though online sales is still increasing quite dramatically, it is not the revolution that it was 2 years ago. And that correction has been quite dramatic. That is why it is almost, I keep on saying the same thing over and over again. That is why it is so important to use all these vehicles, TikTok, Instagram, whatever else, YouTube, as spaces to grow your community, to keep on selling the product that you produce. So COVID has had a huge influence on us and how we experience things. Also in the, I've talked about that as well, is in the level of what the creative looks like. Everything from that super slick image to a handheld thing, and everything is very relevant right now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Another question from Emmanuel. How can you build and promote a brand pulling different forces and strategies? How can you build and promote a brand pulling different forces and strategies? That's a bit of a broad question. I'll throw it out to the gentleman.
It is very broad in terms of He didn't really specify what he was referring to, but I think when building a brand, I could go back to what I was saying is, really deciding what is the core value of this brand, what is it that what is your value proposition, what is it that you're looking to communicate to people, and I think when looking at digital strategies, you need to be able to kind of set your brand apart. I think brand originality is important. I would say that when strategizing for your brand online, you need to have a really, really good corporate identity. So something that sets your brand apart, even visually, when we see it, we have to be able to know that, okay, that's Stadio. Just seeing that little color bar at the top, we already know that, that's Stadio because they've set their brand up like that. And it's important. Those things are kind of the little things that set your brand apart. I think also really having high quality media. I've seen a lot of fashion entrepreneurs who produce incredible work, but who aren't photographing it right, who aren't investing in good quality media, because that often is kind of half the battle won.
Right. Okay.
Fantastic. I've got a question from actually Anal. This was while she was breaking up. What advice would you give to aspiring content creators and digital marketers looking to make a meaningful impact? And I'm sure, I think you've already referred in various ways. You've referred to core values. You've referred to authenticity. What are some of the practical, maybe, and now if I can rephrase the question, what are some of the practical skills and practical knowledge that content creators and digital marketers that they should learn in this context?
Look, I think when putting together digital marketing campaigns and content, it's very important, first of all, to storyboard your content. I think a lot of people think it's as simple as switching on a camera and you get the content and it just so happens to be good. But the practical kind of taking it back to the drawing board, strategizing, what am I trying to shoot? What am I trying to portray? What are the visuals I'm going to capture? That's really important. And then I would say, again, high quality content, making sure you're using good quality equipment to capture your content. Well-lit content is also important, audible content. So just make sure it's a really, really clean, good quality execution. And then, of course, I would say, go back and sit and think about it and research and plan it out before going out to do this content.
Excellent. Yes. Chris?
There's a lot of designers that think that the process to being successful needs to start as slick and as clean as all these enormous brands we aspire to be, the Pradas, Alexander McQueen's, whoever else, Ferragamo, whoever else those big brands are, that spends huge amounts of money on lots of different ways and how they present their brand. But the reality is that if you are a small business, you just need to start somewhere. The amazing thing about social media, its memory is incredibly short. People don't remember things from one day to the next. So as you are progressing in the way that you do things, how you think about things, so your audience grow, and actually they are on this process with you. And by doing that, you probably can create a really great following. So my best advice at starting your brand and promoting it is basically to start. Just make some kind of a start and do it on a regular basis, even if it is just as easy as a fit. If you think if you sort of exude your brand, get into the clothes and show the people what it looks like on a real person. Start posting it everywhere. Do a short little video, put your camera up. Then at some point, hopefully you've sold a few products, you can start getting a photographer to help you with all of that, or a videographer, or some kind of a marketing person can come in as a partner with you. Just start doing it. Rome wasn't built in a day. You need to start somewhere.
Can I pop in there? I think Emmanuel was saying in the chat that that's his problem. He's got no funding. But I think if we talk about, and I think Chris answered it now, just start somewhere. There's something around building a community on social media, but there's also a thing about building the community within your industry, and collaboration becomes very important, and that's exactly what Chris was saying now, Emmanuel. Yeah. Okay, so we get to this stage. Is there any other questions from our participants? Or
Frankie, can I quickly just comment on Emmanuel's clarity, or him saying that that's his issue in terms of funding and all of that? I think also remember the great thing about digital is there's often ways around, going around the professional setting. So, you don't need an editor. There's an app for that. You don't need to be able to be your own graphic designer. There's an app for that. You don't need to be able to be a fantastic copy editor, for example. There's an app for that. So I think explore the world of digital and fully take advantage of it. There are so many presets, so many, and that's why I think for me, sometimes it's difficult when brands are putting out poor quality work. Yes, we understand that the brand is starting off and we are lenient on them, but there's so many different platforms that will do it for you, that it doesn't have to completely be a write-off, for example. Just because you're starting out doesn't mean it has to be poor quality.
It's almost as easy as if you've got a question, Google it. You'll find the answer.
Absolutely.
I hope that answers your question, Emmanuel. Okay. So anybody else, is there any other questions in the chat, or somebody that wants to come in here?
No. Okay. Then I want to, from the bottom of my heart and from the institution, Stadio School of Fashion, I want to thank you, Moketwa, and I want to thank you, Chris, so much for sharing your time with us and your knowledge, your wisdom, and your insight, your experience from the industry. It has meant so much to us. I hope you'll appreciate that we'll obviously share this knowledge with our students. And we want to wish you the best of luck with your endeavors going forward. Please don't be a stranger to the Stadio School of Fashion. You are always welcome within our doors. And to the audience that joined us tonight, I want to say thank you very, very much for joining us. It was an inspiring session. I agree with Eugenie. And we hope to see you all at the next spring sessions, which is held next week, Wednesday, the 11th of October. Chris, Moketwa, and of course our moderators, Frankie and Anel, I want to thank you so much for moderating the session, and I wish you all, again, on behalf of the institution, a very good night.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye, Chris. Bye, Dankie.
Bye, Frankie.
Sjoe.